Hey everyone, just popping in here, and I'm so excited to say that I have been nominated for the second year in a row for Favorite Adult Podcast for a 2024 AVN Award, which is super exciting. I'm super humbled and just really, really gracious and just stoked that some of you guys voted for me and in the pre-nom. So thank you so much. I would really appreciate at this time for your vote. So go ahead and check the links in our show notes below for the voting link. You could vote up to 5 times per day up until the awards on the 27th. And I hope to see you all there at the AVNs. Come say hi and don't be a stranger. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Stripped by Sia, your podcast for strippers, sex workers, and all the fancy naked people in between. I am your host, Steph Sia, aka Kim Chi. It is 2024, it's a new year. You will not be catching me on stage if that's what you're looking for in terms of like the beginning of this episode. I was like mentioning about where I'll be. I am not currently booked, but you can find me online because I'm also an adult creator and content creator on OnlyFans, as well as a cam girl on Streammate. You can find me there exclusively. Other than that, yes, I am a sex worker. If you're listening and tuning in for the first time, this show is all about sex work and especially dedicated to destigmatizing our industry. And I do that by educating folks, by bringing wonderful, talented human beings on the show every single week, including this week. And if you are curious about who you bring on, you're just going to have to wait a couple more minutes longer. But we are talking about sex worker representation in the media because it has been a little while since we've talked about that. And when I say a little while, it's more than a few seasons now that we've chatted about this. So hold your horses. We will get there. But I just want to say first of all, since it's 2024, I just want to say hello and thank you to all you wonderful, fabulous listeners out there. I cannot thank you enough for your support. It's going into year 5 of the show, which is really crazy to me, but also very humbling and just amazing. I still can't believe we're here. So I just want to thank you guys. If you've listened to the show once, if this is the first time you're listening, if this is like the 1000th time listening, thank you all so much for your support, including those folks who are also financially supporting the show on Patreon. I just want to give a quick little shout out to those who are on the top tier there. We've got Snoo from Germany. We've got Justin Erickson. We've got Geyser, Selena Money, Moxie Mayhem, Eric Arajo. We got B York from Seattle. We've got McKenna King from, I think, Edmonton. Red Door Products. Hello, Dan, all the way from Seattle as well. Thanks again for contributing. And if you're curious about like what those costs are, it's as low as $4 a month. So the price of, again, questionable about like where you get your coffee, but could be $4 a month, which is as low as a coffee, where you might be located. And that gives you access to exclusive bonus content, which is not available anywhere anymore. So all those fun bonus episodes, you've got video exclusive content. You'll get the videos before everyone else gets them on social media because you only get like a really, really small clip of that on social media, as well as getting the episode before anybody else does. So go check it out. It's patreon.com/strippedbysia, and hopefully we'll see you over on the other side there. If you do enjoy shows like this and you're curious about educating yourself more about the adult industry, then check out my network, which is skyhawkafterdark.tv. It is a network, as I mentioned, that is full of other adult creators. We've got podcasts, we've got videocasts, other fun, great projects there. So go check them out at skyhawkafterdarktv.com. And last but not least, if I didn't mention before, I'll mention it now. If you are subscribing on Patreon and you're wondering where those dollars are going, they're going towards majorly funding my website. 100% of the costs definitely go to that. And if there's anything extra, which sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, it will go to me attending adult industry events like expos, any kind of conferences that we have in town and whatnot, because, you know, at the end of the day, everything is a cost. So that is that. And speaking of website, if you are looking to get your website done, you could go contact my friend Anthony Joe of Fox Digital. He helps sex workers build their websites or maybe like give their existing websites a makeover. Go check him out because he's offering all Strip by Sia listeners 20% off new website builds or just new websites in general. So check him out. Tell him I sent ya. It's foxdigital.design. And we're back here talking about sex work representation in the media. Sorry, guys, this is like my first time recording in a little bit, and I've been sick for over a week. So if you hear me hawking, like coughing and hacking in the background and sniffling, that is what's going on right now. So I apologize, but I'm very excited to bring on our guest on today. They are a huge advocate in the sex industry space up here in Canada, which I'm really, really great to start to collaborate with a lot more Canadian sex workers again. They are also, I guess, the owner, they run the largest sex work media archive in the world. They are also the executive director of SWAP Hamilton, internationally acclaimed trans femme full service sex worker with over 10 years of experience. And what else do I have to hear? This is a huge list. I keep scrolling and just keeps going on. But I am very excited to bring Jelena Vermillion on to the show today. And if you're not aware of this name, then have you been like living under a rock or something? Without further ado, seriously, I'm just like, and you started following me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so freaking cool.
Well, I'm surprised that my friends knew you. Hi, it's Jelena Vermillion. I was surprised that like my friends in town. Like, well, one of my friends in town is friends with Lula Blue, and then
Yeah,
Lula
love Lula.
had suggested that I just simply ask you,
Yeah,
and it
of
worked
course.
out. And I'm so honored. So thank you so much, and I'm grateful to be on air with you. And yeah, I love your podcast. I think that it's really important. I'm actually like. I'm more of a book girl, but I'm so like I'm a little bit reticent to podcasts in general, not like any particular individual, just like podcast as a format, I guess. But yeah, I wanna. I've been trying to grow, try to branch my horizons and do new things. And even though I do so much, as you mentioned, I wanted to like for example, I'm trying to like maybe become more intelligent by learning different language, and just like branching my brain so that I can be more effective in ways that I could not imagine. But you know, the way that I currently use my brain to dispel stigma around sex workers, their labor, and actually most of the work I do is yes, focused on sex work and sex workers, but broadly it's focused on advocating for marginalized women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a transgender woman. I moved out at 17 from an abusive household. I have a very sort of deep and nuanced understanding of like gender, race, class, and like in intersectional based on Kimberly Williams Crenshaw's theory of intersectionality. So the understanding of how all of those intersecting gender, race, class experiences, usually, of course, her theory starts with race first, so, and it's
Mm-hmm.
race based on other forms of positionality. So of course being white is such a mitigating factor for myself that I use my whiteness as a tool when I'm
Right.
in the media. For example, I use my whiteness and I use my passing privilege as a trans woman to wield authoritatively. And unfortunately, because of the power dynamics of colorism and white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
my message is it's unfortunate, the dynamic, but what happens is the effect is it's assimilated. The message of decriminalization of sex work, of why is it important that these laws are removed, why is it important that we understand and educate the public about, okay, what has the government done, how is it violating everyone's rights, and how could your rights be violated, as simple as being called a whore, and the social ostracism that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
um, I relate that to my experiences of poverty, my experiences of homelessness, my experiences of being, enduring abuse. And ultimately, I fight for justice. And I see so much injustice happen to and around sex workers and in sex work, and it's not their fault. And I see the infantilization, and I see the schism of treating of how the government and society treats sex workers because of the erroneous criminal law and because of stigma as both victims and criminals, and their babies, but also we have to take their children away, and like there's just so much violence that we endure that I am just sick of it. And so the only way that I could see a way forward, the way that I felt that I could make a positive impact is by educating. And I looked at research, and it showed, and like I've talked to my friends about people with cognitive dissonance, and how do we make the world a better place when you're at a rally and the people in front of you are screaming hate. And I've tried to practice what I preach. I've gone to the hate rally at the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. There was like a huge anti-trans. They were saying don't educate about trans
Right.
stuff in school because we want our kids to be kids or whatever, and
Right.
don't let kids use a different name without notifying the parent, which essentially outs them. And I tried to speak to a couple of women. One was Muslim and one was I believe Christian. Yeah, one was Muslim,
Mhm.
one was Christian. And I basically was like, had a conversation with them, and I tried to be like, look, I'm transgender, this is my experience. And while they listened, there was a couple of the bad actors behind them that tried to sort of interject and
Right.
interrupt. But eventually, I was like, "This isn't your conversation. You need to leave. I'm speaking to these women," and we had a productive conversation. I was essentially like, "What you're," so I tried to parse out what was their problem. What do you believe? What do you feel? What is your concern? They told
Mhm.
me, for example, that it's like they don't want children to be educated in a certain way, and this can be applied to sex workers as well, because it relates to stigma, it relates to
Right.
misinformation and disinformation. And
Right.
so when we're having this conversation, eventually we came to the like conclusion that the messaging on their sign was very violent because it didn't actually relate to what they wanted to say, and it was just like a bit of like shock factors. It was as shocking as the signs you see in like on the corner of any intersection of like the pro lifers that have the
Right.
the bloody fetus signs. It's like shock factor. And so we sort of agreed on that, and we agreed that the messaging could be better,
Mhm.
or more effective or clear. And then I explained how that would be hurtful and why people are responding with such emotion. And then
Yeah.
eventually I was like, I agree with you. Like, maybe we should. Anyways, the point that I'm getting at is that, like, to change the world, you have to relate to an emotional part of their brain where they can actually understand the impact emotionally. And generally, the research shows that the only way people change their minds about something they already have an ingrained prejudice about,
Yeah.
or an assumption or preconceived notion, is that um, they have to know someone. So until they know someone who's trans, until they know someone who's black and who has been either murdered or experienced racism or has seen it firsthand. I lived in Virginia, for example, for 6 months in 2014 as a on a B2 visa as a foreign national, and I saw black men walking on the sidewalk getting carded. I haven't seen that in Canada, and
Yeah.
they talk about Canada's racism being under the carpet, and like I got to see where plantations used to be, that kind of racism. And it's like it's sobering because it really you need to understand and witness and experience degradation, I believe, in order to sort of like fully be a full person and to like have the full arsenal of humanity to respond to the world. And
Mhm.
so I use media. So I'm a very prophetic thinker. And so I was like, okay, I need to use the media, not just in the sense of appearing in media appearances, which, I've done many printed publications, live radio and television as well, but many, many news interviews for articles, newsprint, whatever. And I think it's the fact that many other people, bad actors, and I think of how I feel disenfranchised of having children because of like inaccessibility, because of financial reasons, and also because of like
Truth.
um, mental illness, maybe family dynamics, maybe I couldn't adopt because I'm poor and all of the stigma around sex work, all of these things. But poor people and bullies are still having children. And so I need to put my mouth out there. I need to at least put my thoughts out there, because all of the people who are muddling the conversation using falsehoods around so-called human trafficking and all of this
Right.
bullshit, when domestic violence in the home and abuse of your children and youth in the home is really a much more prevalent thing. And I, as someone with personal experience with that, like, I think that um, it just spits in the face of what violence actually occurs and what actually needs attention, and real care, not just carceral solutions. So for me, I look to media. I was enriched by media through my life. It kept me alive. Listen to music. And so when this is all leading up to the archive, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, for
it,
sure.
it, and so for me, like, I just was really inspired a bit by a sociological theory called the spiral of silence, which is by Elizabeth Noel Newman,
Okay.
who is a Holocaust survivor.
Okay.
She's since passed, but the theory of this sociological theory says essentially that people in society know and can ascertain what the majority opinion is on any particular subject, especially ones that are, you know, divisive, or, that cause a lot of division. And so the thing that people do is, when to respond to the majority opinion, they will censor their own thoughts and they will conform uh, to the majority opinion in order to avoid becoming
Conflict.
target of this
Right.
of the stigma, and therefore they don't want to become associated. So there's actually, like, many ingrained, like, tribalistic, like, dynamics and mechanisms that just automatically happen because a lot of us don't get past. I'm in nursing school, and so we study cognitive developmental theories, psychosocial, psychosexual, moral development theories. Coleman's, Erickson's, Kohlberg, Erickson's, and Paget's theory, for example. And some adults never get past the origin, like the first stage of just like avoiding punishment and seeking reward. Like, they're always this and that, and a lot of us don't have deep thought around the world. It's mostly just like our base Maslow's needs, and that's okay. But, like, many of us don't think like largely about the dynamic of the world and the interplay between different conventions and society and history, and there's a lot to say, right? And
Yeah, for
so
sure.
it's hard to really capture. And so this theory essentially teaches that the media has responsibility in representing marginalized folks, or any kind of thing that needs amelioration, that needs healing, um, by there's a responsibility with the media to represent these folks with dignity and nuance and, like,
Right.
compassion, because ultimately what it does is perpetuate or get rid of stigma, hopefully. So, and we know that historically, we see so many representations of sex workers in media as the dead hooker, the dead hooker, the dead hooker, the dead
Yeah,
hooker,
someone that's murdered, someone gets
right?
killed first.
Someone that
Yeah.
deserves it, someone that had it coming, she was a drug addict, someone who was
Right.
considered less than. And that's so deeply ingrained in people's minds that we absolutely forget that most of modern society is built on the flesh of our backs, of sex workers'
Mhm.
backs.
Totally.
We were there during the HIV epidemic, when there was mutual aid being provided in communities, when HIV response programs were being provided and disseminated by sex workers on the street in their fucking communities. Transsexual sex workers who were drug users, who were homeless, were providing more shelter and education than fucking our government ever was. And our
Right.
government,
Amen to
so I'm
that.
thinking, we have been intrinsically. And so for me, I needed to learn that myself. I needed to understand. I'm wearing her, oh God, I don't want to cry. It, Carolee's ashes are in this necklace. So the woman who coined the term sex work. I met her. I didn't get to meet her, but I was friends with her, and we did a video together. And so we'll talk about making media. And she was a famous, she was an award-winning documentarian and videographer.
Wow.
And we sort of did a little project together before she died. And I got to go to her memorial when she did pass, and she named me in her will. And like,
Wow.
the check's on its way. Like, it's only a couple grand, but it's still a beautiful honor to even be considered for something like that. And I was able to meet her childhood friends. And so I'm deeply inspired by the lineage of sex work advocacy. And for those that don't know, the coining of the term sex worker, Carol Lee was at a feminist conference in the 70s, mid to late 70s, and they were having a panel or some sort of conversation about what was then referred to as prostitution most commonly. And they had used the term sex use industry. And Carol piped up and said, I don't really feel comfortable using that term because it feels like it's objectifying me. And I'm an actor. I am a what is the word? Like an autonomous, consensual, active actor in this exchange, the sexual exchange. And
Hmm.
so I think it should be sex work. And
Wow.
she changed the way that we linguistically um, reflect on and relate to our sexual labor as sex workers. I would consider that we as young sex workers take for granted the paradigm and the framework the language that we actually have, the TikTok videos, the discourse, all of it, even though we are deplatformed and we are censored on purpose, and a lot of us feel discouraged to speak. The fact that we can still access so much online is so incredible, because and we have to understand that it's something we should feel proud to take up for to I'm sorry, I'm going to cry, to take for
No.
granted, because she wanted that for us, because she wanted for all of us to relate to our work in a way that was dignified and that was individualistic, because that's always what it's going to be. Everybody relates to work in a way that is individual, regardless of if it's in the sex industry or not. And I wanted to take all of the lineage that I have been so privileged and so blessed to just encounter and be a part of and be welcomed into, which, as someone who's so lonely and deals with mental illness and like struggles to make friends, like, it was just such a blessing for me, and it kept me alive. It was another reason to live. And
Yeah.
I had been going through, for like 5 years or so, a situation with my living arrangement where essentially I was being targeted for eviction for a long period of time, because they had
Oh
found out that
gosh.
I'm trans, and because they knew that I was sex worker, and like, I'm in the media, so they kind of put two and two together.
Oh
And
gosh.
so yeah,
Wow.
so they were doing heinous things. Like, this is going to be the probably one of the juiciest episodes you ever make. Like, they were blowing up, so they had taken every single tactic to try and evict me. So when I say every single tactic, I mean like every single framework that they could try and argue. So they said that they said that I had too many things in my back room and that I was causing a fire hazard, so fire code. They were trying to say to the municipal law enforcement that I had been running an illegal business, so they were trying to get me under the licensing code. They
Oh
tried to
wow.
they made a noise complaint to the municipal law enforcement saying that I quote, and now I know the exact, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's pretty much the same. The only reason I know the content of the claim is because one of the employees, who I won't name here for reasons, but she was a city employee, or is a city employee. She read out the complaint to me, even though she wasn't supposed to, but she was kind enough to do that. The complaint said that I almost said my legal name.
I'm like, let's
Yeah,
not do that.
let's not do that. I'm like, oh, Jelena makes sex noises like all through the night, and like
They actually
it had
said
come.
that.
Jelena makes sex noise all through the night. No, it said Jelena makes indecent sounds all throughout the night, and like they had
Right.
made a claim that it was at 3 or 4 in the morning. So it had gotten to the point where I was so fed up that I had installed cameras all around my apartments and inside my apartment, including like pointing at my bed, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna catch them in a lie, and I
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
because they had eventually started making a pattern of like, oh, there's sex noises happening again, there's sex noise happening. So one night they were like, it happened last night at 3 a.m. I'm like, pulled up my camera footage. There I am sleeping at 3 a.m. In fact, here's from 12 a.m. when I went to bed I gave it to them after I was done masturbating, and then and then like whatever till like I gave it like 2 hours after they said I was doing it. I'm like, here I'm sleeping the whole time. Funny how you lie a lot. And then whatever, they kind
Oh
of,
my
that's when the
gosh.
table started to finally turn, when I started to put my foot down and to to just be like, no, you can't just make up these heinous lies. They blew up condoms and put them in the walkway. They would refuse
Oh wow,
to.
so lots of things going on there. This sounds so
Yeah, like
malicious.
I hope people understand. Like the reason why I want to tell you all these things on the podcast specifically is because it illustrates the length that people will go to, and the length that people, like how much people will wield stigma to
Yeah.
harm you. And
Yeah.
I remember one time I stopped, the guy stopped being interested in me, and then he was just like automatically flipped, and he was like, oh, I'll just tell people you were a prostitute. They won't care. I'm like, oh wow, there you go. Thanks for outing yourself sooner.
Right.
But
Right.
anyway, so the point is that it culminated in when he made a false complaint to the police about me. He said that I was causing property damage when I was not. The police officer assaulted me, and
Oh
like, or
gosh.
at least he met the definition, like the threshold of criminal assault in Canada. He was arrested because of my cameras, because I had footage of it. And he was actually, I got him demoted as well. So what happened was I sued the police, and I sued the situation with my living situation, including the superintendent in them. And yeah, I won. I actually serendipitously signed. Oh, I can't. No, I can. It was
Can
resolved
we say that?
yesterday. I can say that. It was
Okay.
resolved yesterday. So it's just serendipitous because it's been a long battle. Most people wouldn't stay and allow themselves to be harassed, but I took all of the when I had sued the police, I had won a while ago, and like it was two separate parts, and just like recently, this part with the my living situation had been separately successful. So the original success of the police lawsuit, I had taken over 10 grand of the funds that I won,
Okay.
and bought the, the majority of the books in the archive that exist today, and then I donated them to the library, including like the book scanner, and then I also had like 14 portraits made by various local artists in Hamilton, and paid them in cash. Well, paid, it doesn't matter how I paid them, but some of them e-transfer, some of them cash, but I paid them their rate is what I'm trying to say,
Okay.
and they did like 24 by 36 portraits of sex workers from across the world that were famous for various parts of historical, you know, activisms.
Mm.
And so I
Okay.
started scanning, basically through the pandemic, the archive.
Sorry, this
Like
is
it,
this how the archive started, or what's the
yeah, that's
story
why I
with the
told it.
archive?
That's
Okay.
why I
Okay.
told it. Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So
So
this is
like,
what happened. This is where it stemmed from.
yeah, like I was under attack of in my living situation,
Hmm.
and because I had moved out at 17, I basically had been moving out and seeking safety my entire life.
Hmm.
I moved out of an abusive household, and yeah, this is just gonna be the juiciest episode ever because it's gonna be me rambling, it's gonna be everything, and they're gonna be like, wow, that's why you do that. I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'm Sailor Moon, man. So I moved out from an abusive household as a trans woman at 17. I basically bounced back and forth from my mom and my dad's, like, it was like it was shitty. It was shitty. They basically just used me as a pawn. So we moved out, tried to seek safety and solace, finished high school, tried to do like secular stuff, saw the discrimination, realized I was trans, whatever, tried to transition, and I had to do sex work when I became homeless, and I had always been interested in it because I had seen Billy Piper's depiction of Belle de Jour in Secret Diary of a Call Girl. That's what it's called.
Ah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which was like probably, and Milk Money as a kid. I watched that in the 1992 or 1994 film. I can't remember. Melanie Griffith. Yeah,
Cool.
and so essentially, like, I wanted to take all of the suffering that I had experienced and the pushback with landlords and um stay, and basically I've won, and so I was able to like seek resilience, and I was able to take all of the, the reparations, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and put it towards like a meaningful project towards back to my community. And what's better than
Gotcha.
taking money from the police that caused violence against you as a trans woman for no good reason, and giving it back to sex workers, because we know how much violence the police have caused sex workers in their lives,
Totally.
including Black trans women, including Shavrana Abdi, who was a sex worker who in 2003, she was a Black Somalian trans woman sex worker from, sorry, and she was a refugee who lived in Hamilton. She, in 2003, she was on cocaine, experiencing some distress, and she called the police. And when they arrived, they dragged her face by her ankles, face first, downstairs. Her teeth were knocked out, and she died. And they
Oh
ruled her
my
death as
gosh.
accidental. And her family did not claim her body because she was trans and she was considered shameful to them. And yeah, I also advocate around women with HIV. I do education about pre-exposure prophylaxis. So it all comes together. Media education,
Right.
compassion, increasing people's relation to understanding, and yeah. So that's
Wow.
the archive has been a project for many years. I wouldn't say necessarily. Well, honestly, it's been a blur because COVID started in 2020. It's already 2023.
Yep.
So
So
I
you
started
started in
it.
2020, you mentioned?
I think it was slightly before 2020 because the harassment started before COVID for
Okay.
sure, 100%. But I think it started in a slow scale way. It started with zines, just the
Okay.
majority of the zines where I was, actually collecting physical zines, not scanning. And then once I got more funds, I bought a book scanner. I used like a ScanSnap SV something. Um, I also use other tools of the trade, like this blue. I don't have the book scanner here, unfortunately, because it's big and bulky and heavy. But this is like
Mm-hmm.
a Blu-ray. It also does DVDs and CDs. You can use it to rip with certain programs
Right.
the content, and you can remove the what is it called? The digital rights management software or encryption, whatever it may use, in order to make the file just like easily clickable. There's not going to be any problems for the person accessing the file.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and then like I moved to scanning old books that had never been digitized
Mm-hmm.
ever, which was really cool. I was able to get some personal books from Valerie Scott's library as well as Amy Lebovich's library, which I returned to them. I think the two were Shannon Hall's Women of the Night and also Horror Carnival by Shannon Bell.
Uh-huh.
Very interesting books. So yeah, and just like it started growing and it, the archive itself is probably the amount of money I've spent on it. It's probably worth over 15 to 20K of just
Wow.
physical materials that I've because I really just like don't believe in hoarding that for myself.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. I think that the best thing that I can do is we are so deplatformed and censored, and people won't listen to us and they think we're babies, like in interacting with city council and our legislators and everything is so difficult, and it's an experience in vomiting. It's an experience in being shat at basically. And
Mm-hmm.
it's anything I can do to keep my dignity in check and to sort of remind other women and other sex workers, because it's not just women, but I understand that I'm here for women. I'm a girl's girl. I'm always going to support male and non-binary sex workers, of course. But I'm here for the girls majorly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, yeah, for me, it's all about letting people know that they have everything within themselves that they need, and I want people to be reminded of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know we only have like 15 minutes or so, right, left,
Oh no,
or
we still got time. It's okay. Don't worry. I got
okay,
this. I got
good.
this.
I love.
I have some questions for you
Okay,
though.
are you
So
loving it?
yeah, there's a lot of things going on. I have lots of questions, but I just want to let you speak and have your moment. But going back to you and going back to the archive, like, is this something that is publicly accessible or something or like a resource that people or academics can call upon or tell us about that aspect?
Yeah, so it's a very unique thing. So I kind of gatekeep it for a specific reason, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not in any bad way. It's actually a FONS, which means just a FONS is this fancy word in archive world to mean a collection of items. Like the items in the collection is the FONS,
Mm-hmm.
FONDS. And so. it's an official fonts collection in the archives, Canada's National LGBTQ2S archives, which is an honor. They named it after me. It
Amazing.
has its own link, permanent URL. It can be looked at there. The current list of items in that particular URL is not fulsome. However, if one contacts me on social media and tells me what they are looking to do with it, I generally am very generous with
Mm-hmm.
providing either individual or parent links depending on the particular project. And please goes a long way with me. I don't need to have my feet kissed, but I do appreciate cordial messages that include a please and a thank you. I've had
Totally.
some people ask me to access particular, like for example, I have all of the seasons of Kink, the Kink
Oh,
series, the
yeah.
old Canadian, which includes Nina Arsenault and Todd Klink, and also Sybil. Why can't I remember her last name? The amazing author Sybil. Her last name is escaping me, but she's a friend. So she's also not. It's just like a piece of Canadian history and sex work history that's so unique.
Mm-hmm.
um it was like $500 on Amazon to get the last five DVD copies. I ripped them, I included them, and a lot of people have asked for that particular file, for example, without saying
Huh.
please, and it's just like, I'm
Yeah.
happy, just like let me
Yeah.
know why and say please, like a normal polite person, right?
That you're
Anyways,
not asking for a lot. That's just
no, I'm really
regular
not. The only thing
manners.
Yeah, it's just about manners. It's not about like kissing my feet. I don't want you to grovel at me. I just like,
Yeah.
please, like I'm autistic. Like I have to play by the rules sometimes. Could you try? Thanks.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So the rules that I play by with it are, so for example, I had a researcher from, really amazing researcher from Austin, Texas. She goes between Montreal and Austin, Texas. Um, and she was asking for like certain films related to trans women, if I may have had them. And I was, she was, she said please and thank you. And as long as I know what the intention is, and like,
Yeah.
she's like, I want to represent trans women and like sex workers and like really like, underscore our history and like represent the dolls. I'm like, okay, done. Here's
Yeah.
the link. You can
That
have
makes
it.
sense.
If it is just like, if it's a researcher, I am wary. I do tend to gatekeep
Yes.
with researchers. I need to know if
Mhm.
it's, um,
What's the
I need to know if the
agenda?
researcher, if it has been or is currently a sex worker, and
Yes.
I need to know what their intention is. I need to also like, even if I know that their intention is good, I need to think about the efficacy of the research, because we can move into the transpulse thing next if you want, but
Sure.
like I've done certain consultancies, and I actually just negotiated another health research project for sex workers in Hamilton with the research
Awesome.
shop through McMaster's Office of Community Engagement, which
Oh,
we can
wow.
talk about as well. But
Sure.
the yeah, so I'm understanding a little bit of it. I'm not saying I'm an expert, you know, epidemiologist, researcher, or anything like this.
Hmm.
However, I can look over what their ideas are, what their dissertation might be, and have an idea of, is this going to be making material difference in sex workers' lives? Is this something that
Hmm.
legislators might have to look at or be like listen to in the future? If not, I don't opt to allow them access.
I
If
think that's fair, though.
yeah, that's the main, gatekeeping is okay if depending on the intention. It's for me, I want the archive to be for us and us, like exactly, like it's for us to not only feel seen and heard and loved and known and witnessed, but also to um for our researchers among our community, for those even they can be an ally, that's fine, but like
Hmm.
I need to know what their intention is and whether or not the research has a, I've worked with Therese Bernier, for example, a couple of times. I've been both a subject in her research, and I've also helped her um, uh, produce questions and helped her find participants. So I've done multiple forms, and I think that ultimately we just want to move forward, and
Yeah.
that's the goal. So I don't want anybody to misuse it, and that's why I do it like that.
No, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, like, going back to, like, I was referring to, like, academia and, like, research and stuff. And, sex workers get asked a lot and we get approached a lot to be a
Hmm.
subject or be subjects, with no honorarium, with no any kind of, like, credit or anything like that. So I think you have every right to be protective about
Yeah.
this archive. I think that is actually smart, and like really being wary about what are your intentions? What are you actually planning to do with it? Is this going to benefit our community or not? Or is this actually going to harm us? Like, what is your
Yeah.
research about? So I think those are all really, really valid questions. And like, generally speaking, like I'm not a big person that's I'm not like big on gatekeeping, but like when it does boil down to the intention, you have to actually really figure that out first before you let the floodgates
Yeah. I
open.
mean, like, at the end of the day, I don't feel bad about it because it's like, oh, I'm sorry, are you a PhD student? Like, I'm pretty sure you are fine. Like, you can either pay for the things that I've paid for to access,
Mm-hmm.
or you can be a PhD student and learn how to teach yourself how to pirate things on the internet like I did. Because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
going to help you if you really like, are you going to credit me or anybody? Like, and that's also another thing. I do like to be credited. I didn't like to before, but when it comes to academics, I absolutely, because
Mm-hmm.
I have a very large CV. I have
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
impressive CV, and I really don't want to undercut my own expertise. And you know what? I think
Yes.
we do that as sex workers. We as sex workers, we are not only do we do that too often, we are encouraged to
Mm-hmm.
do that. And I
Yes.
don't want to fall into that trap. And so I'm like, no, you know what? Like any consultancy I provide, I'm an expert. I've been
Mm-hmm.
paid to testify as an expert witness against, in a criminal proceeding, but in a constitutional challenge against a sex work law,
Right.
explaining why to the judge, a sex worker might hire a third party, a photographer, or a security officer, whatever, secretary.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
ultimately, we want to, we want to move forward. So,
Yeah. And give credit where credit is due.
yeah.
Period.
Oh, actually,
I
it's
think
funny
is
you
so
say that
important.
because it has been controversial. And I think that's
Okay.
actually a positive sign because I have gotten a lot of negative. I think it is worth stating, and I'd be remiss if I didn't state it. That
Sure.
um, it has ruffled feathers even among some activists and elder activists in the sex work community. I've
Uh-huh.
been asked by a few authors and academics, mostly, I think I will say, who to have their books removed from the archive, and I've just refused multiple
Mm.
times because my view on it, and I guess I'll just state it here for anybody that wants the tea. Um, I almost named names and I won't do that. But anyways, they can listen to it here for once and for all. I believe, first of all, I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in copyright in every terms. I believe in copyleft. I think that, and that's not to say that I'm gonna go out of my way to undercut a sex worker's um, like commercial profits, and that's exactly why I gatekeep it, and I don't make any commercial profits from it. Just for everybody's like for the record, I've
Yeah.
like I've spent my own fucking money and I've gone into debt to do this for us. And so I'm not trying to be a martyr of it or anything, but like for those that I've heard whispers, I'm among the grapevine. I hear things. I know what people say about me and what things have been said about the archive. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the academics who um I think those academics who would not want their books in the archive need to really deeply investigate their ethics and understand maybe that the issue that they have is with their publisher exploiting
Mm.
them and not me. Because here's
Yeah.
my dilemma. I have also an interest in law and I have an interest in science and I have an interest in a lot of intersecting things as they relate to sex work. And
Yep.
so copyright law and the precedents within the law state that a pirated piece of media does not equal a lost sale. In fact, most of the time, when people see a piece of media that they love, they are more apt to purchase a copy later. And that's personally, I can relate to that. I sometimes, when I love a particular album or particular artist, I will purchase the digital, the CD, and the vinyl of the same album because I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you know, a lot of we also need to give our head a shake because as sex workers, I don't think any of us are becoming millionaires off of our memoirs. Like, can we get
No.
real? Let's just be honest with ourselves. And that's not because what we have to say isn't valuable and that we shouldn't be millionaires for that. But like, unless we're Britney Spears and we have like the PR horses behind
Team.
us, we really aren't going to
Yeah.
have that happen. I have 66K followers. I still experience deplatforming On Twitter,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's on Twitter. Like,
Yep.
I don't have really many followers. I've like under 5K on Insta. It's nothing. But like, like it at the end of the day, like I having my archive does not actually deleteriously impact the income for sex workers whose whose pardon me, whose whatever they produced is in the archive, because it's not undercutting them. In fact, most of the artists and authors of books are honored, and have been people have reached out to me to be put into the archive because they understand the true spirit and intention of it. And so ultimately I just say, you know, if I purchase a copy of your book, which the for the record, all the people, individuals who have had a problem with me and have asked for their books, either single time or multiple times, to be removed. And there's like 3 or 4 titles that I'm thinking in mind. Again, I'm not going to name them. I have bought physical copies of every single one of those. Now,
Mhm.
there's 2 things I want to mention on that. The reason why I say physical copies is because if I buy a DVD and I invite my friend over and we watch that DVD, is like Paramount Pictures going to sue me? No, they're
Right.
not, right? So
Mhm.
neither should you. Neither should you be having a problem because I'm actually showing a friend of mine your work, and I'm
Right.
actually like lauding it and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful that it belongs in a category of being belonged." You know what I'm saying? A belonging, pardon me. And so anyways, the other part is that the current legal framework in Canada for libraries is
Mhm.
that our archive is actually in an agreement. It's actually, we are in collaboration with our public library. Our public library backs me, our local history and archives department of our Hamilton Public Library specifically. Originally, it was Karen Milligan, and then she changed positions, and now it's Luke Stempian. Bless all of their hearts, and I think it's also Grace and Anna are the other 2 employees who like one
Okay.
of them helps scan. I think it's Grace, and Anna helps is going to help like an exhibit be made of it. But
Cool.
there's so much to say. Like the controlled digital lending network or legal framework in Canada is what the library is going to be using to make the physical copies that we have in the archive be uploaded to the Internet Archive for public access. And you have to have a physical copy because that's how the library uses its institutional privilege in order
Right.
to like that is the only time in which copyright law can be quote unquote, it's not actually violated because it's written in law to provide an exclusion for that particular circumstance, which has been my long-term goal for the archive. These people don't understand that like it being in the long-term archive means that it's like in a place of honor. Like people want that to be. And so anyways, that it's the intention of the archive is humanizing everything and bringing us justice and bringing us representation, and like go a place of solace for us to go to look at media for us when we want. Like it's not a flippant thing. This thing is almost a terabyte. It's like 800 gigabytes or something like that. This whole
Wow.
the entire is
Archive?
it? Yeah, I think it's like yeah, I can look it up right now. It's like 800 gigabytes, I'm pretty sure.
That's not that
um
much.
well,
A
I mean, like in
terabyte
the
is pretty
scheme of
big.
things, no, but I'm also a oh, let me just make sure, because like I have multiple files in it. I can
Well,
tell you
while you
exactly.
look at that, I have questions for you too. So, like, if someone
Sure.
is like wanting to reach out to you and potentially like get something from the archive, I know
Yep.
maybe from what I've heard from this conversation, there's different mediums of media that are encompassed in there. You mentioned zines, there are some films, books, and stuff like that. Um, Talking about media representation for sex workers, and I asked this question before we started recording, but like, what does like true representation mean, and what does it actually look like, in your opinion?
It's nuance. It's not going to be any one particular character, any one particular story, or any one particular movie or film or like TV show. It's going to be an array of humanized, honest depictions of sex work for individual characters, or if it's a documentary for individuals. The thing that is unique about this archive is that, as I mentioned, it's based in the lineage of Carol Lee's of the honoring her history, and
Hmm.
also because she formed the original San Francisco Sex Worker Films and Arts Festival, of which the collection of films she had, the repertoire, she allowed me graciously to access and pirate a lot of those things, knowing the intention of this archive. So many of the films
Wow.
and older documentary films in the archive, Die Yuppie Scum is one I'm thinking of, Our Bodies, Our Business is one I'm thinking of, um, are very good examples of um, like true HIV epidemic based activism, by sex workers, for sex workers in their communities. And it's just such, like, through the archive, I have basically learned that we have been saying the same thing for decades. We have been saying the exact same things for fucking decades, and no one gives a shit, and no one cares. It's poor mothers and people with disabilities, and Black and Indigenous and Asian and otherwise racialized folks, and like trans and non-binary folks, and like people who are just trying to make a living, and they think we're rich
Yeah.
and we're not, and like men want
Yeah.
to take lower prices, and then the police want to take money from us and pimp from us from fines, and it's like, and we don't, and how do you pay the fine other than working? And you can't, it's like they don't get it, and they won't listen, and they don't care, and it's just frustrating. So the only thing I could do, one thing that stands out in my mind is like when we had Swap Hamilton, the drop-in space, we had
Mm-hmm.
like a three-pane commercial glass window, and so I put like a monitor in the front window, playing on loop 100, like 24/7, the Saint Nizier Church occupation of sex workers in 1976, I believe it was, um, in France, and I remember driving by one day and seeing a street-based sex worker standing there, and I actually was going to McDonald's, which was not far, so I decided to sit in the McDonald's, and then when I left, the movie's like, the documentary's like 45 minutes long, and
Yeah.
so she stood on the street, and it wasn't like bad weather or anything, but she stood on the street and watched that in the front window the entire 45 minutes, and like honestly, that is what I want. That's what, like, because I know that she could see herself, and the
Mm-hmm.
amount of
Mm-hmm.
stigma that occurs is so heinous that people feel like they don't belong. And I feel like
Right.
that so often that I just can't stand to let other people feel that way. It's
Mm-hmm.
just so terrible. And yeah, I
Wow.
mean, it kind of relates to the research that I just negotiated. Should I talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I think one more last thing too, in terms of the archive. What kind of categories are there too? Because it sounded like
Oh,
you had a number
categories.
of
Yeah, yeah.
categories. Yeah,
Here, I
I'm
can.
curious.
Yeah. So in the sex work archive, I'll read them direct instead of trying to paraphrase it from my mind. So there's so if you have the parent link archive, some of it's haphazard because I have, but the actual folders. So there's the Activism Toolkit by Stella Montreal. There's the Big
Yeah.
Susie's folder. So the Big Susie's is actually a group preceding Swap Hamilton, which was formed by Ian Jarvis and Dr. Amber Dean. Sorry. Um, she did her dissertation on the Vancouver's murdered women by Picton, and
Right.
so they gave us Swap Hamilton their 2 grand in their bank account left over when we started. They were very lovely. The next folder is books from Amy. That just means the 5 books I got from Amy Lebovich.
Mm-hmm.
Hooks by Julie Oakes, Stripped by Misty, Unrepentant Horror by Linda J. Eversole, Horror Carnival by Shannon Bell, and Ladies of the Night by Susan Hall. Oh, Hooks by Julie Oakes. Um, the next one is Crime Think. I'm a big fan of Crime Think, that organization. So I have like a lot of their publications. Um, and they also have their zines and posters and their film series. The next folder is Hamilton sex work history. It's a little bit more specific to Hamilton, so I just like
Right.
segregate it to for my own mental purposes and ADHD. The next folder is sex work rights photos.
Oh
17 folders
wow.
with,
Cool.
yeah, it's just like different like activisms from throughout the United States mostly,
Mm-hmm.
and different years of like people doing like sit-ins and stand-ins with red umbrellas and stuff. You can
Yeah.
like, yeah, if you want it, I'm happy to share.
Cool.
The next one is sex workers welcome training, which is just my own, like I use, that's where I put my best practices trainings materials, and I figure like it's not proprietary, so I just put it in there if people need to
Sure.
like adapt or whatever. Um, the next one would be sex work articles,
Mm.
which is different research stuff, including a lot of the research that would be in the Power Ottawa Research Repository, which is
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. The next one is sex work audio. There's not much. It's just like there was one particular guy that I met at the Montreal, Norman Naraki, at the Montreal Anarchist Book Fair this year, and he had
Cool.
like this interesting tape, and so it's in there.
Cool.
There's also, is that the pony? One second. Sex work audio. Pros. Oh right, there's also the 1980 interview for the Prostitutes of New York, which was like an old magazine and a group. Um,
Cool.
they did like an interview with Annie Sprinkle. Anyways, the next folder is.
We got lots of stuff in there.
Oh yeah, this
Lots
sex
of
work
really great
books.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, there is. Sex work books is the next folder. The next folder after that is sex work magazines. I'm the first person to digitize all of Spread magazine with the blessings of the original authors, for example. The next folder is sex work stickers, posters, etc. The next folder is sex work videos. The next folder is sex work scenes, and then the last folder is websites. And then there's like some like miscellaneous like files, but like they're
Right.
self-titled. So yeah, it's pretty
Very
large.
cool.
It's 900.
It
I
is
just
large.
rechecked.
Yeah.
900 gigabytes. So it's just under a terabyte. But of course, I'm
That's still a
always
lot, though.
scanning. It is. I mean, it's not a lot in the scheme of things, but I'm always scanning like the PDFs to not be so giant, so that hopefully they pull up on
Mm-hmm.
people's devices, upload on people's devices, like not so terribly long. But
Right.
there's a lot of actual files in there, like thousands and thousands. So, as far as videos, there's at least like, oh god, there's at least 500. There's at least 500 books. There's at least 150 to 200 documentaries, perhaps,
Dang.
And there's at least 50 zines. It's
Yeah.
incredible. I'm very very proud of it, and
You should
yeah.
be. That's incredible. And a lot of work, too. So thank you for your hard work on that. And I understand why people want to get in on that and to also
Oh,
have access. So,
oh yeah. I mean, I'm
you,
happy to share. It's just a matter of like, just want to make sure it's not going to be used in a way that's like going to hurt us
yeah, malicious
or I
intent
mean,
or anything like that.
I'm not going to give mean girls it either, just for real. Like, just for real.
Yeah.
Like, if they're nice to me, I'll do it, but if I hear you're mean later, I'm canceling that link, girl. Like, oh.
Hmm. Fair enough. Yelena, I think we have a little bit of time to also talk more specifically about your advocacy work, the research that you're
Sure.
doing with Transpulse Canada,
Yep.
and also Swap Hamilton as well. We can do that before we dive into some Q&A. So leave some time for that.
Sure. I'll just like Cole's note it because like honestly, there's like a huge living document about the stuff that we've accomplished via Swap Hamilton. But Swap Hamilton, I'd say like the main. I'll start with the Transpulse and the research first. So, with Transpulse Canada, I was able to help produce, implement, and consult with Transpulse Canada, the actual research team. I'm listed on their website as a member of their team as well as credited in it. And I also have a review on my LinkedIn from one of the main research directors of it. So it's really cool. But basically, it was about trans non-binary sex workers' experiences in Canada. There was two portions. They've also since released data about trans and non-binary sex workers' access to healthcare, even those who have a primary doctor in Ontario or in Canada. So, and it basically said, I think it's 46 to 52% of trans non-binary sex workers in Canada, or those who took the survey, have unmet healthcare needs within the last year. And then there was also data about trans and non-binary sex workers' experience with the police. So that's obviously very important.
Yes,
And
of
then
course.
lastly, we were very recently approved for a research project that I proposed to the Research Shop, which is a part of the McMaster University's Office of Community Engagement. We were provided the acceptance by Evan Gravely, which is so lovely. I forget Anushka's last name. Anushka is our team lead, but essentially I proposed, and I should pull up the tweet because honestly, I'm tired, just like you're tired, and like I'm probably gonna miss say it. So, and I hope I'm not putting you to sleep. I know I've been told I'm melodic. So,
No, not at all. I'm just trying to
that's good.
digest everything. So,
It's a lot of info. I apologize.
no.
Thank God we can pause it. So, so the I'm gonna say research. Evan Gravely. So effectively, the research is asking three specific areas. We're going to look at it's to form a needs assessment document is the ultimate goal, but the three areas that we're going to use social work students, and I'm going to provide each of those students who are involved in implementing the survey questions, the best practices training. We're going to have a debrief, etc., and I'm going to participate as well, like in the provision of questions, and I'll probably like answer the survey myself. Is one, local sex workers experiences of stigma via social exclusion or ostracism and stigma. And then two, local sex workers experiences of access to healthcare or obstacles in accessing healthcare. And three, local sex workers experiences of law enforcement. So that it's specifically law enforcement because that could mean Hamilton police, that could mean municipal law enforcement, that could mean bylaw, that could mean like border patrol if we're talking about a migrant sex worker here. And it's relevant because it's relevant all over the world, but it's relevant specifically in Hamilton because Hamilton is considered a sanctuary city, which means that you're not supposed to, if you are involved with the police and you don't have status, you're not supposed to be, they're not supposed to call border patrol, but often that doesn't happen in practice. And it also means as a sanctuary city that you should be able to access city services without showing ID. So yeah, we want to protect all people in sex work, and that
For sure.
unfortunately migrants are having a hard time.
Yeah. I hear you with that. I'm also on the board at SWan, Vancouver. So yeah, I'm like, I didn't know that Hamilton was also a sanctuary city
Hamilton,
town.
Vancouver, Toronto.
There we go. Because I know Toronto, but I was like, oh, Hamilton too. Things you learn every single day. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's,
Dang.
I believe it was like an old framework that they instituted a long time ago, but the people who started it, I think, moved on to other pastures.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Well, holy crap. This has been like a plethora of information today. My head's
I
going to
know.
explode in a good way. But I hope everyone at least has some takeaways too and will be knocking on your door
Or
potentially.
think of my voice, one of the two.
Well, there are just a few more questions from the
Sure.
audience this time. So not from me, but from the audience. So I guess we'll move over to the Q&A portion of the show here. So this person wrote in, is there any media that you feel represents sex workers accurately and respectfully?
Yeah, so there's like probably I'll give like my three that I really love. So Working Girls by Lizzie Borden,
Mm-hmm.
wonderful film, very very matter of fact. I'd say it's the most realistic in terms of matter of factness, and as far as how it's filmed, it's like realism. It's not, there's not any particular visual or graphic effects that are implemented in the film. It's just matter of fact. It's beautiful. However, it's beautiful. It's accurate. The most recent Criterion a collection remaster, 4K remaster. I own it, and it's in the collection. It's beautiful. Yeah, I really love. Honestly, who is the film? But I can't remember the director's name. I have it in front of me. Give me 2 seconds. It's
Yeah, for sure.
the film is called Horror, but it is by Ken Russell.
There we go.
Uh, Ken Russell. Yeah, it's by Ken Russell. Um, there was also a recent remaster on Blu-ray of it. It's also in the archive. I quite like it. It's a little bit more campy. It's more like shock factor, but also correct. I'd say. Um, a little bit more sensational. I really really enjoy Harlots. Harlots is a depiction of Edwardian or Victorian rather, sorry, sex workers in 1800s, when a third
Oh,
of women
cool.
sold sex, a third of the female population sold sex,
Right.
and to subsist. And so, very interesting historical depiction. I think that it is probably one of my most entertaining ones.
Okay.
Veneno by which is on HBO Max, also available on Crave. It's about Cristina Ortiz Rodriguez, who is known as La Veneno, which means poison in Spanish. She was famous in Madrid, Spain, in the 90s for being on like a talk show, being one of their hired hosts until they shut down. And then also, she protected her trans sex working stroll um, from like literal fascist Nazis with a sickle that she used to use while working on a farm as a youth.
Wow.
Um, Showgirls is really good. I like this particular remaster that I just bought recently. Um, And I'm trying to think what was the other one that I wanted to say. Oh, I just saw Poor Things in by oh, I don't know how to say his name, but I feel like disrespectful, so I should look it up. It's like Yothankros. Ah, anyways, it's Poor Things. It's in theaters right now.
Oh,
It has
cool.
Emma Stone. It's very well done. I didn't have any inkling going into the theater, and I watched
Gotcha.
it twice in theater because it was that good, and I'm just like so blown away. Um,
Excited. I need to add this to my list for things to do this weekend. So
oh, watch it! Oh my
thank
gosh, I
you.
recommend it, and it's so good. It's like very it's not all about sex work actually, but it does actually um, very much do us justice. And I think that it depicts visually the actual act of sex work
Yay.
very matter of factly, just like
Excited.
Working Girls, but a little bit more with fantasy, sort of Alice in Wonderland style, like like fantastical like visuals and stuff like this, like more
Good to
graphic
know.
appeal. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I know a lot of people are always like looking for like, okay, what are actually some good films and that actually are like accurately portray us. So I think is going to be so helpful for so many of us because a lot of us are
I'm so glad.
curious and have been disappointed in the past. So,
It's true. Yeah, Veneno is
um,
my personal favorite, I would say. Best
gotcha.
thing I've seen on trans women and sex workers ever.
Perfect. Yeah, okay, add it to the list. If I have time, I will extract that and put them in the show notes as well, so it's easier for people to get. The last question here is kind of like a two-parter question here. How does one get back into sex work after a long break? This person writes in parentheses, because life got in the way for a couple months, especially camming and video making. Like, how do I get my groove back?
Yeah,
Writes
that's
this
a really good
person.
question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that we need to just realize that like your sexuality is a renewable resource. Okay, so you're never gonna lose it necessarily, and I mean unless you're ace, and that's its own thing that you navigate. I think that first of all, other than the deathly overarching specter of rent and needing to pay bills and all of that stuff and needing income, try to just sit with yourself and be comfortable before you actually do any kind of work, because I think it's really important to like to set an intention when you do that kind of stuff, even if it's like, I hate this guy, I need this how many dollars to do this, like even if that's the intention, that's fine. Just like don't don't do it mindlessly. I think that that's a large part of the thing, is that sometimes we get into rituals that become mindless, and then
Yeah,
therefore the actual like ceremonial aspect of participating in a sex work session with a client, or creating a video custom, or whatever it might be, right? Like stripping on stage. I think that it becomes a bit contrived when we get burned out, obviously. And I
yeah.
think that we want to avoid that. How are we going to do that? Well, I don't want to be the one to be like, self care, self care. I mean, that's important, but I think
Mm-hmm.
that what we often lack is community care. So,
Ah,
and not all of us have that, right? Especially as sex workers. So I think that yes, we do need to love ourselves. We do need to focus on self care where we can, but I also think we need to rest. I think that
yeah,
resting is actually the more important advice I could give, because even the heart rests between each beat. And, we can't be a constant production model. Even though we are the means of our own production, we can't, you know, constantly produce. Resting is productive as well. Resting is
100%.
needed just as much as production. And I think that to get back into the groove, it's really important to let it flow, ebb and flow. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe it's too vague of an answer, but honestly, you need to rest longer. I think that that's what your body is telling you. And for camming, maybe I could suggest changing it up a little. Maybe get a green screen if that's too much of a difficult thing or too inaccessible. You could just try like using different colored sheets or something in your background,
New
different
lights or
textures, different,
something.
yeah, different lighting
Yeah,
colors, different fixtures, just like, different stuffed animals. I don't know, depending on the aesthetic of your videos. Just
right.
like mix it up.
Yeah.
Also, walk outside, go for a
Yeah,
walk,
touch some
move your
grass.
body, jump up and down in
Yeah,
your apartment just for a bit to get your interstitial fluid moving. Like just move your body a little bit. You'll probably feel a bit better. Don't judge yourself because you aren't doing this within a schedule that you expect of yourself, or whatever, the exact context might be, you need to live. You're an animal. We're
Yeah.
animals.
Yep.
You need to live your life more than you need just to produce. And when you can give yourself that moment to breathe and that like proper flow of rest, then your creativity comes back. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Agreed.
when you feed yourself, you have enough energy, right? So the same goes for your creative self.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. If I can add a couple things too to what Yelena
Please.
said, I mean, like, if I can be truthful, this is the third time Yelena and I have tried to record this episode. We had technical issues on the first try. I actually
Yep.
had to pull out and rest on the second time because
Yep.
I couldn't power through. And I'm like, I recognize that I'm really sick right now and I have a huge headache and I need to lie the fuck down. So that's what I did. And like, we will come back. And honestly, we're both like, well, maybe I'll speak for myself, but we're both in good
We
places
are.
now to record this episode. So sometimes you just need to take that break and then come back when it gives you joy again. And when I say that,
Yes.
like as a person that's run her own business for in many different capacities, not just in sex work, but like when something becomes like work to me or it feels like work and I don't have any like joy or passionate anymore, then that's a sign for me to take a break or call it quits. So I hope that you can also decipher and delineate between those lines about like, is this something I want to do for the long run? Or is this something I want to get back into and maybe like make goals for yourself along the way and be kinder to yourself as well. So those are a
And
couple things
smart
I want to add.
goals. Smart goals.
Yeah.
So like, they don't need to be huge, as I said, like changing colors, whatever. But smart goals is an acronym referring to like, specific goals,
Yes.
measurable goals, attainable goals,
Yes.
realistic
Realistic
goals,
goals.
and then the T is time based. So like, I'll
Yes.
make a video within the next month,
Yeah. Or
and I
by
will have it
when.
edited within the next 2 weeks. Like that's a
Yes.
time based,
And
specific, all of
specific.
those things. Yeah, so there you
Exactly.
go. It's a framework to help you sort of like take the baby steps towards getting, getting more success, getting the goal achieved, getting more cam clips created, whatever you really want to do.
Totally. Yeah. So
So,
best of luck to you. But Yelena, back to you and I. Before I let you go, where can we all find you?
all right, yeah. So I'm all over the internet. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, my website, but I have like one thing that like has all of them together. It's called tappy.tech/Jelena. I think it's TS Jelena Vermillion. I should know that off by heart, shouldn't I? Hold on, just one second. It is no, okay, it's tappy, tappy.tech, TECH / Jelena Vermillion. There's no TS.
Gotcha.
I also, my Instagram is Isis_intrepid, ISISINTREPID, and my Twitter is ISISintrepid without an underscore, so just ISISINTREPID, and Facebook page is TS Jelena Vermillion. My website is www.isis-intrepid.com. And yeah, I'm pretty friendly. So, if you DM me on Twitter, if you DM me on Instagram, that's usually an easy way to ask me about the archive. I also have email, Jelena at isis-intrepid.com. And that's all of them.
All the things, all the links, and they're all going to be available in the show notes. And yes, feel free to reach out to Yelena. She is amazing and most likely will answer you and is very responsive. So please reach out. Go give her a follow. Bug her about the archive if you're interested, hopefully with good intentions. And for everyone else listening at home, it is Stripped by Sia on all major podcast platforms. If you do happen to listen on Spotify or Apple, I would love to ask you for a 5-star review if you haven't already, and maybe a written review too, because I read them all, and maybe it'll be posted somewhere on social media at some point as well. But yeah, other than that, it's new episodes dropping every single Sunday at midnight. It's going to be every week again. Now that this episode is out, obviously not at the time of recording. We're recording before New Year's, so This episode should be out, I think, second week. I'm going to edit this part out. But with that being said, if you want to get in touch with me, it's Stripped by Sia on Instagram. No, I lied. Stripped by Sia podcast on Instagram because my original one was suspended and
Oh,
taken down, which sucks.
that sucks.
I know. It makes me mad. And I was like, let me help you get it back. I'm like, it's not coming back.
Have you tried it more than once?
It just got suspended and deleted like the one time, and I did nothing. I wasn't even posting anything. My feed was just stories.
You should be able to click a link to be able to ask them to reinstate it.
Yeah, I did try to do that. Nothing
didn't
happened,
work?
and I
Did you
couldn't
try
log
more than
back
once?
in. I did try more than once, and then I had like
Oh,
60 days
okay.
to do the thing, and yeah. So now
Oh,
I'm just like embarking on a new journey. Stripped by Sia podcast on Instagram.
I'm so sorry. That's
I know
annoying.
it's so shitty, but like I was getting married at the time, so I was like, it's fine. It's fine. I have other things in my mind right now.
Yeah, but it's like, fuck, that's my life. Hello.
I'm like looking at a giant bug on my window. Edit this part out. Other than that,
You was freaked out.
I'm like scared. I'm like, holy shit, I thought I killed that guy. Stripped by Sia on Twitter or x.com. Strippedbysia.com if you want to go ahead and pitch yourself to be on the show. I'd love to hear your ideas, whatever episode topics you have. And patreon.com/strippedbysia. And that is everywhere you can find me. And we'll catch you all for another episode next Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us, Jelena. It was great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Such a pleasure.
Thank you. You're listening to Stripped by Sia, hosted, produced, and edited by Sia. Music by Ted D. Graphic design by Maria Bellanderama, and photography by Ian Dabrin. Are you going to be at X3 or XBiz LA this year? It is award season, so you know what? Everyone who is somebody and who wants to be is going to be in town in Los Angeles collaborating. And of course, you want to ensure that you're doing this safely. So, courtesy of Sage Health, located in Van Nuys, California, we are offering $15 off your test this winter. Use code StrippedBySia to get $15 off. We'll see you in person, and happy testing!